I will answer the following questions raised by members. First, what is the substance of the whistleblowing report? Second, are domestic postal services affected? Third, does this affect the review of postal services? First, what is the substance of the whistleblowing report? The report concerned the alleged falsification of e-commerce shipment data for SingPost's customer. IMDA had assessed and was satisfied that the incident was confined to international transshipment parcel delivery overseas and did not affect regulated domestic postal services. This is a matter of corporate governance which the SingPost's board is dealing with. Second, are domestic postal services affected? As mentioned, the answer is no. SingPost's board has assured the government that postal service operations are not affected. Nonetheless, IMDA will continue to keep a close watch to uphold the public's interest. As the Public Postal Licensee, or PPL, we expect SingPost to meet its obligations for its regulated postal businesses. These include ensuring that domestic letter delivery meets IMDA's Quality of Service, or QoS, standards. SingPost's QoS performance is independently audited, and the results are published on IMDA's website. Over the last 4 years, SingPost has performed within the QoS standards. I would also like to assure Mr. Sakhyandi Supat that postal services for legal notices and court orders are not affected. While the whistleblowing report did not affect regulated domestic postal services, we were concerned, as Dr. Tan was, about simultaneous dismissals of senior executives in a firm providing essential postal services. Hence, IMDA had issued SingPost an advisory to uphold proper corporate governance and processes, given its PPL status. Third, on Mr. Pritam Singh's and Mr. Louis Chua's questions on how this affects the postal sector review, the answer is that it has not, and the review is ongoing. IMDA will continue to work closely with the CEO of SingPost's Singapore Business Unit, who remains in the role. Our postal services have to transform to remain sustainable and accessible, while safeguarding the interests of the public and postal workers.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the SMS for its answer. I recall asking SMS last year, does SingPost, the private company, have some de facto public service role, given the role of post officers in ICA passport collections today and distribution of masks during the COVID pandemic? I've got two related questions for the Minister. Firstly, given what happened to SingPost's leadership, does Minister agree that the health of the brain and heart of a corporation can also affect other organs and other limbs of the corporation as well? And if so, is there any concern that what is happening to the unregulated international part of the business might eventually spill over to affect the regulated domestic part of the service business? Secondly, can Minister elaborate on what IMDA is doing to find out what happened at SingPost to ensure that SingPost staff morale is maintained, especially on the ground, and that management is not distracted from the essential services aspect of post office service provision in our heartlands, including for our Clementi residents? Thank you.
Sir, I gave a relatively more comprehensive reply to the member's question last year on the postal services, including the post office in Clementi, so I wouldn't repeat some of those points. But to focus my answer on the issue at hand and the PQ that was raised, as I mentioned earlier, our primary concern as the regulator is that domestic postal services to the public is not affected. IMDA has ascertained that this was the case. The whistleblowing incident involved overseas e-commerce parcel delivery and did not affect domestic letter delivery. That said, we are concerned with both the findings of the whistleblowing incident and the subsequent dismissals, and are monitoring the situation closely to ensure that domestic postal services remain unaffected, especially during this period when a new GCO or the group CEO has yet to be appointed. And as I mentioned earlier, we are working very closely with the CEO of the SingPost's domestic business unit to ensure that business continuity remains, staff morale remains, and that they deliver the obligations under the licensing regulations. And we are also monitoring very closely, and the QoS standards and the various regulatory standards are still in place. So to assure members that we are paying close attention to the incident. Thanks.
Actually, just one SQ. I asked about the review of the domestic kind of postal license and all that, but at the same time, given the incident that has happened, and I also note that the dismissed executives have disputed the claim, in such a regard, would the government then consider conducting its own review, not just specifically to the domestic postal services obligations, but also as to the firm as a whole, in terms of giving the government some assurance that whatever representations that the firm has made in regards to its domestic obligations and other operations, that there is actually a proper process in place and that the firm is as a whole managed adequately? Thank you.
So on the member's question about the review of the postal sector, that review is ongoing. As I mentioned in my reply earlier, the structural factors that the postal service industry and sector is facing hasn't changed. There's a decline in terms of the letter postal mail. More of us are not sending a physical mail, more using digital means. So the structural factors have not changed, and we are still looking at how we can ensure that the postal services remain sustainable, accessible, and also cost-effective for all Singaporeans to meet our needs. So that review is ongoing, and we'll continue to work with SingPost's team on those factors and reviews. On the point about ensuring assurance that the domestic postal services remain unaffected, as I mentioned earlier in response to Dr. Tan's question, is that we are closely monitoring the situation. And the member mentioned about some of the exchanges publicly between the dismissed executives in the SingPost management and board. I wouldn't talk more about it because there might be litigation action between the parties. But from IMDA as a regulator, our primary concern is make sure that the domestic services continue and are not affected. And in this regard, we've also sent an advisory note to the SingPost board. And we are glad to note that SingPost is taking this seriously. For example, they have taken steps to help ensure this. The chairman has indicated he will step up to provide closer guidance to management. The Singapore Business Unit CEO, who directly oversees domestic postal services, remains in the role. And the group CFO has been replaced by an experienced executive. And SingPost has also newly created a group COO role, and a person has been appointed to oversee the domestic operations. So these are steps that SingPost has taken, and IMD as a regulator will continue to monitor this situation closely.